welcome to it. It's a little bit after 5 o'clock. If you're just joining us for the first time, I'd like to say hello. My name is Shaggy, and every day we get a chance to sit down and talk to interesting people. Today's interesting person extraordinaire, Michael Pulliam, or Pulliam.
Pulliam. Thanks for having me.
Huh. And here's something that I really, really like doing, and it's when we have a new guest that's never been able to come into the show before. I like to throw them in here about 30 minutes before the show and show them absolute chaos that happens.
I've seen worse.
And that's the funny thing. And we'll get into some of the places that you've seen things worse, but let's get a little bit about you, Michael, the person. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, first off, where are you from?
Well, I was born in Columbus, Ohio, and my father was a television executive. So we had kind of a gypsy life. It's almost like the Army. So he got transferred a lot, and it's hard for me to really pin down what my hometown is. We lived in Atlanta and Sacramento, and then I went on to live in San Francisco, and then Chicago, and then L.A., and he was in Cincinnati for a while, and then he ended up in Honolulu, and so we've all been everywhere. Yeah.
Oh, God. And did you ever, like, in all this transplanting around, did you ever just look at your parents and say, dear God, stop?
I think I got so used to it that I didn't know anything else. A lot of my friends would say, how did you deal with that as a kid to have to, I don't even know. I think we lived in about, I'm going to guess, 10 or 12 buildings in the span of about 15 years.
Wow.
And then probably 5 or 6 schools. So we were moving around a lot and changing, but it kind of made me be outgoing and meet people.
Yeah,
you know,
because the obvious question is for me is like being a kid, moving around a lot. Was it hard on your life? I mean, because you don't have any sense of place or identity at that age.
I think it's only hard if it wasn't what you've always known. You know what I mean? I think that sometimes when you're maybe like the child of someone who's a politician, and you have the microscope of like, what your family's doing all the time because your dad's running for office or mom's running for office. Mm-hmm. It seems crazy to me, but if that's all you've ever known, then it doesn't seem crazy because that's the life that you were born into. So we just, if he was moving on to a different television station or we would just pack up and move to the next town. And I would actually get excited to brand new place, never been to before, and
Yeah, just after a while, does this make you like, and pardon the expression, does this make you a bratty kid at this point? Because there's no consequences if you screw up in this town.
Right. I don't think so. I've never had anybody tell me I was a bratty kid. I think sometimes I was a little bit forced to grow up faster, if that makes sense. So maybe sometimes I developed an adult kind of sarcastic almost personality, and I identified a lot with kids that were maybe a couple classes ahead of me, more so than the ones that were in the same class.
Oh, so
maybe I got a little bit of a reputation of being, I don't know,
that's
too cool for school, or a little too big for my britches, so to speak.
Did anybody ever say that to you? Like, you just think you're so cool.
I don't think, I probably shouldn't have chosen the word cool, because I don't think I was ever considered cool, but I think sometimes people thought that I was a little more mature or adult or moving on to thinking that the games or whatnot of my class were for little kids or whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's so funny because, most of the time when you have people, especially if their dad is like Mr. TV guy, you would think that you would have this kind of an air of, man, my life was so cool and I was so cool, and instead you're like,
well, there were a lot of fun things. Like one of my favorite things was that he would go to work on Saturdays a lot, and there was a show that was distributed, syndicated all over Northern California called Bob Wilkins' Creature Feature, and it was a late-night movie show where they would show these horrible...
The B movies.
The B movies, horror movies, them and the Godzilla movies and Mothra and...
It came from planet Earth.
Exactly, all of those movies, Night of the Living Dead. And I would love to go to the studio and sit in the back and just watch them tape this show. And it's basically the same thing that you see on TCM, where you'd have somebody that was the host, who was Bob Wilkins, who would talk about the show, and he might if possible, be able to get a guest to then sort of play off of and talk about the movie. And then they would do all the commercial break vignettes where they'd come back for 2 minutes and then return to the movie. And I really loved watching how a TV show got put together.
Now, was there ever a point like back then that you were just like, I can do this, please put me on the TV?
Yeah, I was actually, the first time I was on television, I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And it was a news weather guy that had a sort of, his gimmick was that he would do jokes. And so the joke was that he would, that I was supposed to be Mickey Rooney, that he was going to go, oh my God, you won't believe it, Mickey Rooney's in the studio. Mickey, come on out here. And then it was going to be this little, because I was a little kid, this 3-year-old that was probably a foot tall would come out, and that was the joke. But I had just crippling stage fright, and these are those big, 8-foot tall cameras that weigh about as much as a car with the lens that zooms in, and I freaked out. I froze. I didn't say the line I was supposed to say. I looked off camera, saw my mom, and said, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," and just ran off.
Wow.
But everybody said that was actually funnier than the line that I was supposed to read.
I can imagine Mickey Rooney would have probably did not think that was as funny as you did. But this is hilarious, though, because Jay, our boss, comes running in here when you came in the studio and wanted to tell me in no uncertain terms, talk to him about being in the Friars Club.
Right.
For people that do not know, what the heck is a Friars Club, and is there chicken involved?
No, but that's an excellent question. It's Friar like a monk, and it is actually about I don't even know the year right now. I want to say it's 120 years old at this point, and it's a fraternal organization for show business people, but over the years it evolved into primarily comedians.
Really?
And I worked at the Friars Club in Los Angeles, which is actually has since gone out of business, and they just have the one Friars Club now in New York. But while I was there, and then I also had a love of old movies and old TV shows when I was a kid, so I kind of knew who these people were and had an appreciation for it, which is probably the reason that they let me become a member and work there and everything. But I got to meet people like Milton Berle and Red Buttons and Buddy Hackett and Norm Crosby, Sammy Shore, Phyllis Diller,
And
Liza Minnelli,
the thing
Sid
is
Caesar.
like,
it just goes on and on.
when we talk about like big entertainers in the modern world, there are none as big as these names that you just went and mentioned.
Absolutely.
And for your experience, though, first off, how in the heck did you end up in the Friars Club?
I was telling you part of this before we went on the air. I worked for the Judge Judy show for a couple of years, and I was actually kind of like her personal assistant. I was.
Baloney!
And she's the complete opposite in real life. She's a very sweet, nice New York lady.
Really?
And just wanted little basic things. It was a very easy person to work for. And I got... when you work in LA in any form of production, you get all of these invitations, whether it's in the mail itself or emails, and half the time, the person that it's addressed to, whether it's a producer or director, can't go to all these different parties and movie premieres and whatnot. So they pass them off. Does anybody want this? Anybody want to go see the Steve Martin movie tonight? Whatever it is.
Yeah. And
so I got the one that was, does anybody want to go to this party at the Friars Club? So I absolutely wanted to go, and I felt like I was coming home, and I just instantly clicked with so many different people and said I wanted to become a member, and they told me what that entailed, and ended up meeting with them the following Sunday for brunch and became a member.
So, now I hope this isn't like some sort of secret society I'm cluing in on, but exactly what does it take to be a friar?
I think you have to, one, they have to like you, but it's really not that complicated. You have to be funny. You have to know what the heck you're talking about. They don't want people that are going to be members there to use it as something to put on their resume. They want people that are going to use the club and, eat dinner there and spend money there to keep the club running. And that's about it, I mean,
Really?
Just being a fan of that generation of comedy and getting the jokes and joining in is pretty much all that's required.
But for me, it's kind of sad because it sounds like what you're saying is before, very talented organization, now just looking for customers for their brunch.
Well, they have to have some kind of means of income to keep the clubs going, and the roasts and the big gigantic benefits that they have a lot to do with it. But there is that daily electricity bill and things like that.
God. So you said you had to be funny. What did you do to prove to these guys that you were funny enough to be a friar?
Boy, well, the Friars Club is a very R-rated club. So if I told the joke that I think kind of broke the ice, I think you would get in trouble. But it had to do with the idea of when the schoolyard bullying, they're sort of picking on the new guy, having a good comeback that just sort of destroys the person that was picking on you.
So that was your ticket.
In a roundabout way. I sort of called this guy on something that I can't say on live television.
Oh. So it's like a gladiator battle. They put you in an arena with all these other guys and let them throw spears at you, and you had to just... Wow.
To see if you've got what it takes, or that you at least can join in the fun and not get offended.
Now, is there any sort of ceremony that is involved after that, like with robes and some blood?
They have
maybe?
a dinner. They have a dinner, and they usually have one or two major celebrities that will do the welcoming speeches and whatnot. And then there's a person that pins you, essentially, gives you your little Friars Club pin. And on the day that I became an official member, it was Larry King. So that was kind of cool.
No, so Larry King is the one that pinned you?
He did.
Wow. And I mean, at that point, did you ever ask him, Larry, what was it like to know dinosaurs? Because, I mean, Friars thing.
That's the kind of comeback that I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. I mean, I figured that to be a member of the Friars, you constantly have to be on your A game around them.
You do.
Yeah. Has there ever been a moment where you're just like, please, guys, not today?
I think there are some times when I was intimidated. Absolutely. There was and I'm going to have to see if I can clean up the story a little bit. There was a party. They would have these parties about once a month it was called the Young Hollywood Mixer. Mm-hmm. And they would invite young agents or agents in training, young actors, comedians, whatever it might be, to come to the Friars Club and appreciate the club and kind of try to keep the membership going, because a lot of those guys were the World War II generation, which, they're not going to live forever. No. And there was a particular young person, probably about 25 or so, that was every other word out of his mouth was a 4-letter word. And Milton Berle went up to him and cut him off and said, young man, do you kiss your mother with that mouth? And begins to berate him for cussing and saying there are women present, so on and so forth. And he is just humiliated and says, well, sir, would you like me to leave? And Milton Berle says, yes, I think that would be best. So then he goes and gets on the elevator, and the elevator door closes, and Milton Berle proceeds to say something 1,000 times filthier than the thing I didn't want to say earlier. And everybody exploded in laughter. And the whole point was he was testing him. He was testing him to see if he was willing to stick up to a guy like Milton Berle and give him some grief right back.
Was Milton Berle one of the most intimidating of the Friars?
He definitely thought of himself as the king of the building, no matter who you were.
Wow.
I mean, it's, you could be, George Clooney could walk in and he would think that he was a bigger star than George Clooney,
Well, the thing is with Milton Berle, at times he could be the king and other times he could be the queen.
He could. He definitely could.
Did you ever see one of his performances like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they used the station that my father worked for in Sacramento specialized in showing old movies and old television shows. So that really was my beginning of knowing who all these people were. Was that I would watch my dad's TV show all the time, and it was the Andy Griffith Show and Milton Berle and Your Show of Shows and Sergeant Bilko and I Love Lucy and Abbott and Costello and the Marx Brothers and Burns and Allen, just goes on and on.
Wow. Now, when it comes to all of these, because a lot of kids in our audience right now are putting...
I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they're trying to Google these people as we speak. But
they should.
These are very funny people. But what years were you present at the Friars Club?
This would have been about roughly 15 years ago.
15 years ago.
So a lot of these guys have since passed on. But some of them, like Milton, I'm not Milton Berle, Sid Caesar just passed away about 6 months ago, Yeah. And Carl Reiner, who was a regular there, is still alive and kicking, and he looks great.
Don't you ever look at those guys and say, how do you do it?
There are certain guys that, without telling tales out of school or whatever, I don't know how they lived as long as they did, because they were part of a generation where it was, they were poor kids that came to being multi-millionaires, and they lived the rock star life, even though you don't necessarily think of guys like I described living that sort of Jimi Hendrix life or whatever. So it's not exactly as extreme as Jimi Hendrix, but pretty close. Pretty wild lifestyles.
The thing that gets me is, and I used to do stand-up comedy too before I realized I had no talent in it. A lot of people don't realize that being in comedy is almost the same as being a rock star.
Yeah, you're on the road and, hotel rooms and fans.
What would you say is your biggest rock star moment as far as comedy goes?
I guess the biggest thing was that I was asked to help produce Sid Caesar's 80th birthday party.
Wow.
And that part of it was really flattering for me. But when I saw the guests in the room, it was mind-boggling. It was pretty much everybody that you can think of was there. As far as the modern day folks, it was pretty much the entire cast of ER, the entire cast of the Drew Carey Show, Liza Minnelli, Phyllis Diller, Red Buttons, the entire cast of The Simpsons. Just every other person in the room, and me, I don't know why I was there. It was just a celebrity, and it was a pretty wow kind of moment.
God, do you ever have a moment where you sit back and you're going, who was I to think that I could be in a room with all these people?
Well, I think it was just, I've always had a lot of respect for elders. I knew what they were talking about, and they thought for some reason I was like the little mascot. I was the, hey kid, come here, let me tell you a story,
Who would you say as far as everybody that you met there, who would you say was your favorite, though?
My best friend in all of Los Angeles is still living, was Sammy Shore, who's Pauly Shore's dad. And he was awesome. He was, literally, my best friend in L.A. was 55 years older than me.
Good God. And did you ever just go over and say, hey, Sam, your kid, what were you thinking?
He talked a lot about Pauly, but, he was very proud of Pauly because he made it, and he had a lot of pressure on him. For people that don't know, Sammy Shore founded the Comedy Store, maybe the most famous comedy club in the whole world. And he opened for Elvis Presley for about 7-8 years. So that's how he made most of his money, because Elvis, as everybody knows, was incredibly generous. And he was he was a typical loving Jewish father. His kids could do no wrong. He loved his kids.
Yeah,
Still does.
Still does, but then again, I guess he's loving them from a distance, right? But let's get into post, because this all happened about 15 years ago.
Yeah, this is.
At what point did you say, okay, you know what, it's time to branch out, and then you ended up in a place like Hawaii for the first?
Well, my father's he was in television for about 35 years, and his last job was at KGMB, but my family always had a place on Maui, and then he ended up living on Maui and commuting to Honolulu every day to go work at KGMB because he just liked Maui better. And I came over here sort of thinking that I would be taking, 6 or 8 months off from the LA Hollywood thing, and maybe I didn't want to go back to LA. Maybe I wanted to go somewhere else, because I had lived in San Francisco and Chicago as well. And then I just never went home is really the best answer. I just fell in love with Maui and didn't feel the need to go back to the mainland.
If you're thinking honestly about it, though, L.A. versus Maui, L.A. really doesn't have a lot going for it when you think about it.
L.A. can be great if you have a great circle of friends, you have a good job that can pay for all the things that you want, because you'll end up being resentful.
Well, the thing that I've heard is a lot of the foot traffic, a lot of the people that exist now in L.A., they don't have to work. They're liquid people. They have trust funds. They have money that's already backing them.
There's that, but then there's a lot of people that are there because they have a passion to make it in some aspect of Hollywood, and it could be something as simple. I was always jealous of people that wanted to be a hairdresser on a soap, and I thought, what a simple, easy goal to focus on, because that hairdresser might make $100,000 a year, if you get that gig.
I am
But I was always more
profession.
like, I want to sell a screenplay and I want to direct a movie, and it's that big picture that a lot of people have when they go there, and it can be a big weight upon you when things don't work out the way you hope they would.
God, so there is a lot of pressure if you're in LA, especially if you're in this whole world. There's a lot of pressure on you just to do something big.
To get something out there so that you're not the guy at the party talking about your career that doesn't seem to exist. You know what I mean? You got to have some kind of, got to get a couple of things every once in a while.
Was there ever a moment when you're sitting there going, please, God, don't let me end up that guy?
Well, I think the moment for me, and I don't mean to put down the community in general because I love Hollywood, the moment for me was working on shows that I just wasn't proud of, shows that I didn't want to watch, and it's like I was just working on the show to get the paycheck. And that's when I said, well, I can be miserable anywhere in the world. I don't have to spend as much money on it, other places. And I fell into going back to my beginnings, which was stage.
So what would you say, before we move on to the stage thing, what would you say is the worst show you've worked on? Please don't say this one.
No, not at all. I think the show that really clinched it for me, and I don't want to single out these particular people because they're very talented, but it was a reality movie about a gigantic hoax that was going to be played upon an actor. And so they told him he was going to get the lead in this movie, and they filmed all these scenes, and he thinks that he's going to be in this big movie. And at the end of, and he's, not a very good actor.
Oh,
so
God.
they picked this horrible actor on purpose. So everybody on the set was in on the joke, except for this poor guy. And then at the end of the experiment, the reality movie, it's like, ha ha ha, we think you're a horrible actor and there is no movie. But then they gave him like $2 million or something like that. But just the whole idea of, I'm making a living making fun of this guy. Wow. That was kind of the moment that I said, I don't know if I want to just grab any old gig that comes my way anymore.
Oh, so at that point you'd learn that thing that's called discerning taste.
Right.
Because it sounds like, you're a very nice, happy, fluffy guy, and you like nice, happy, fluffy things. And when it comes to that side of LA, that whole industry of it, this is something that you're saying you couldn't do even if they threw the money at you.
No, I couldn't. And it's not like it was a gigantic amount of money, but I just wasn't having fun, and I figure if you're not having fun in entertainment, then you should get into a different business, or at least find another outlet within the entertainment industry.
Well, what is the most fun that you've had?
I would have to say that working at the Friars Club was a blast, massive pay cut to go work there, and I didn't care. And I'm having a blast on Maui working at the EL Theater, and I've now branched into writing about entertainment for the Maui News and on my magazine. So I get to kind of do, in a roundabout way, be involved in as many things or as few things as I want, and be able to do it while living on the island of Maui. So it's pretty awesome.
You ever call up your friends from LA and be like, neener, neener, neener?
It's kind of a dual jealousy, because some of those friends have gone on to be incredibly wealthy and have big-time VP titles with production companies and studios. But then when they come visit, they're like, you don't have any ulcers. You don't have to work 17 hours a day. You don't have people yelling at you all the time. Maybe you had the better idea here,
It is funny because a lot of people in life choose to have happiness over monetary gain. Which
Right.
would you say was your major focus?
I would have to say happiness. I mean, happiness in the field in which I want to be in, which wasn't easy. It definitely took a long time to try to forge out an entertainment living on Maui. But it involved patience and being friendly and waiting for my turn, instead of sort of, a lot of the LA attitude would be like, I've done this and I've done that and give me a job, and that's not going to go very far on Maui.
It doesn't seem like you're that type of guy at all.
I'm not.
Huh. And why is that? Because if my dad ran all these shows in LA and stuff, and I knew all of these greats, and I was a friar, Are you kidding me? My head would not fit through these doors.
Well, it's then, that's a catch-22 because I worked for a guy in San Francisco, and I think I can just barely get away with telling this story. Biggest producer in Northern California. And I just worked with him on one project, and he was just, I'm just going to go with the word jerk. And nobody liked him. And but he paid very well. And I went up to his right-hand man one day outside of the theater and just said, how can you work for this guy? And he went through this story of like he did this for me. And, all my kids went to Stanford. I have this house in Sausalito, and just lists this wonderful life. But then says, but I wouldn't do something on him if he was on fire.
Whoa.
And so I thought to myself, I don't ever want to be that guy. I mean, he's got everything in the world. He's producing these massive shows with immense celebrities, and he's richer than just about anybody I'd ever met in my life. And the people that had worked for him for 20 years felt that way, would say something like that.
That's like going home and being like, we've been married for 25 years.
So I'd rather be well-liked and a little broke,
It seems like that's a kind of an extreme that you do have to pick from, either being liked or being broke.
I don't think it's a black and white thing, but there is definitely a choice that you need to make when you get to a certain level of entertainment.
And what age were you when you made that choice?
I think I was probably around either 30 or 31, right in there, just saying I don't want to play this game, and I'm going to kind of go off on my own and see if I can be 100% freelance and not have to answer to anybody.
Wow. I mean, that's kind of a young age to make that kind of a call in life,
Well, I think, again, it was the traveling and having to kind of grow up a little sooner than some kids maybe had to.
Oh, okay. I can see how that would play into things, and especially you got to think that being in L.A., especially being in the whole rigmarole of the entertainment, it ages you prematurely, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Wow, man. And how old would you say you are now, as far as what L.A. did to you?
Oh, well, I wasn't there long enough for it to really, kind of leave a scar or anything. I had a lot of fun. But I think it definitely affected a certain amount of my, I don't know what if you want to call it, naive or trustworthiness. It certainly made me be a little more. There's a line in a Mel Brooks movie that says, "Hope for the best, expect the worst," and that is kind of, I've adopted that. I always assume and hope everything's gonna be fine, but I prepare for it to be horrible.
Wow, wow. That's a great attitude to have when you come on a show like this, by the way. We expect it to be a good show, but every day we prepare for horribleness. Well, in just a sec, though, we get to come back and talk about some more horribleness, but actually not horribleness, some good stuff that you're doing. Yeah. And I mean, it's really kind of funny because one of the things that you're doing is really hilarious to me because in a million years, and I stress that million years, I would have never thought that this would have been a musical, and you're bringing it to Maui.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so I am going to throw into that in just a sec. Real quick, though, we do have to throw into something else. Have you been following any of the news lately?
Haven't caught much today except for World Cup.
Oh, wow. Yeah. By the way, Germany. Go Germany.
Yeah, I'm going for Germany, too.
I know. A lot of people have placed money on Germany. But there is some kind of crazy news, and we'll get into that in just a sec. I have to take a quick break here and introduce a new segment from Sarah. Sarah is, of course, Sarah Rodriguez, who came in yesterday and says, hey, let's do something interesting during the show, and we threw together a newscast. Well, today we threw together another one, and in the stories, not only are we going to be talking about, well, you'll see, Time Warner and Comcast, that whole crazy thing. Oh, God. Yeah, but we'll be talking about that, and for the first time ever, there's UFOs spotted by NASA, not on planet Earth. A little creepy, huh? Okay, but we'll get into that with Sarah, and then after that, we'll come back and talk more with Michael Pulliam about some stuff concerning showering and some stuff concerning legalities. Yeah, all right. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Sarah Rodriguez with your exciting local news. The worst cable company in America, Comcast, is about to buy the second worst cable company in America, Time Warner, for $45 billion. If the federal and state government allow this to happen, the Comcast giant will have monopoly control of cable systems in Hawaii. Believe it or not, they want you to approve this takeover. Come to a public hearing and tell the state cable regulators what you want. Hearings will take place this Tuesday, July 15 at 4:30 p.m. at the Cameron Center Auditorium in Kahului. And if you can't make that one, over in Lahaina on Thursday, July 17 at 4:30 p.m. at the Westside Senior Center. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to ask for things like more money and equipment for public access, a guarantee that KAKU channels will look as good as local broadcast channels, including HD, fast, affordable internet for all, free Wi-Fi in county parks, libraries, and community centers, a technical audit of the cable system before any sale, a 3-year rate freeze, studios for Molokai, Lanai, Westside, and Hana, no restrictions on cable funds, and cable TV and internet for every home in Maui Nui. The last of 15 public meetings hosted statewide by the U.S. Department of the Interior ended on Maui on Tuesday with a resounding message from the native Hawaii community.
No Department of Interior.
More than 300 residents crowded into the standing room only cafeteria at Pomakai Elementary to tell the federal department that its move to reestablish a government-to-government relationship between the United States and the native Hawaiian community is not welcome. The Interior Department announced last month that it would be conducting public meetings on all the Hawaiian islands. The overwhelming majority of testifiers in Hawaii, including nearly all who spoke on Maui on Tuesday, have testified against any notion of federal recognition, saying instead, "We are not American." The meeting next will be held with Native American groups on the mainland. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, how much are 2 pictures worth? Especially if they show an odd-looking, allegedly descending light heading to the surface of Mars. In the first JPL full-resolution image, a bright light appears above some mountains, taken by the rover's NavCam right camera. 31 seconds later, the rover's NavCam left camera snapped an image of the light seemingly closer to the Martian surface. Some reporters say it took place on June 23rd, but according to the information on the raw jet propulsion laboratory images, it was on June 20th. And that's your local news with Sarah Rodriguez.
Back. That's Sarah with the news. Now, wasn't that kind of like UFOs on Mars?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I couldn't see what she was talking about, but
it was a
maybe I'll
tiny
go
little
on
speck.
internet and see what that little dot is.
But you know, it's really nice having other people to come in and do stuff on the show, because otherwise you have a full hour of looking at this face. and I know that you've been in the fryers and you've been trained to put up with irritating things, but thank you for surviving the first 30 minutes of looking at me.
No problem.
Well, let's talk about things that we're looking into, like the future.
Yeah.
I got to hold this up just because
Sure.
I did not know Legally Blonde. It was a movie that came out with Reese Witherspoon, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's now a musical.
It was turned into a musical in 2007, and about a year and a half ago, the amateur rights became available, and the company that I work for, Maui on Stage, purchased the rights, and they're presenting the musical, which opens Friday night, just in a couple days.
Okay, so I got to ask, because Legally Blonde, really an over-the-top movie. How is the musical against the movie?
The story is nearly identical. They do a couple little things differently to sort of utilize the genre of a musical. But otherwise, it's pretty much identical. It's a very fast-paced musical, and there's a lot of songs. So sometimes a musical might only have 12 or 15 songs. This has, I think, 25, and so it's like there's a song every minute practically for 2.5 hours.
So is this like the West Side Story for idiots?
I'm not sure I understand the analogy. It's, I would say that this is part of its funding and its original incarnation was MTV, and I think it's a musical that is intended for people that don't always like to go see musicals like West Side Story or Les Miserables or Phantom of the Opera. It's definitely a pop culture musical. There's some hip hop and reggae in it as well.
Okay, so not so much Les Mis, but perhaps if somebody saw Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, they would be very excited for this.
Possibly. I think it's a girls' night out. That's what it's going to be. So guys, if you're wondering where all the girls are, I think you should go see Legally Blonde because they're probably all there.
You saw the movie, right?
Oh, I loved the movie. I had a really bad attitude going into it, expecting it to be stupid, and I was so pleasantly surprised.
I think a lot of people do. Like when you see a movie like that, there's obviously something that's kind of comical. We don't have the same expectations now as we did with like Zuckers and Abrams and Mel Brooks and guys like that. So the fact that the movie came out and was good,
it's it's based on a book, and I think that's part of the reason why it's so rich. There's a lot going on in that story, as opposed to a sort of a formulaic Hollywood screenplay, because it had a book to be based upon.
Now that's the funniest thing, because up until this moment in history, I didn't know that there was a book about Legally Blonde.
Most people don't, but, that's fine.
Have you ever read the book?
I have not read the book, no.
Oh, okay. Is reading the book a requirement for seeing the musical?
I don't think you need to read the book. I'm sure it goes into much more detail about some of the different characters, but, I don't think it's required.
Well, this is a movie. It didn't come out, about like 8 years ago or something? It's not that old.
Bit. No, more like 14, 13, okay. Something like that.
It's not that old of a movie.
Not that old.
Yeah. A lot of people, especially in theater right now, kind of have this rejection of the new stuff coming out.
Right.
And then you have something like this that kind of crosses over and goes, okay, hey, look, I was a pretty successful Hollywood film. Let's take this to stage. In your opinion, did this work? Because a lot of times it doesn't work when you translate from film over to musical or musical to film.
Sometimes it doesn't. It has definitely been a trend for many, many years on Broadway. And I was actually just reading today about some of the new ones that are coming up, that Tina Fey is collaborating with the same woman that wrote this musical to do Mean Girls the musical.
Are you kidding me? No. Mean Girls the musical?
They're doing Bull Durham the musical.
Oh,
They're
God.
doing Honeymoon in Las Vegas the musical. So this is definitely a Broadway trend.
I am sorry, but I'm still thinking, you have just made my wife and all of our gay friends incredibly happy with Mean Girls the musical.
It's still a ways away, but it's on its way to Broadway at some point.
Could you imagine that? And none for you, Gretchen Wiener. Okay. Let's just play a little make believe here.
Sure.
Okay. So, if you could have your druthers, and know what druthers are, because some people don't.
I do.
Okay. If you could have your druthers and pick a modern movie to go musical, which one would you be like, that's the project I got to get on?
I don't know. You should have given me advance warning. But I will say the first thing that pops into my head, and I've never seen it, and I really want to, there's this great sort of art movie biography called Grey Gardens about the cousins of Jacqueline Kennedy. Have you ever seen this movie?
No.
It is this creepy, weird movie about these two ladies that it's a mother and daughter that live in this dilapidated mansion that have, I don't know how you would describe it if you've never seen it, but it's one of those, it's a train wreck, so if you like watching train wreck stuff, it's that, but in a intellectual way. And they did make a musical out of it. And
wow.
It's called Grey Gardens the musical, and I've always wanted to see it, but I don't think it made a lot of money. I think it was sort of a niche market.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could have 50 Shades of Grey the musical, but I'm sure a little bit of a niche there. But this starts on the 11th and runs through the 3rd. How many shows are we having here?
That's 12 performances. So 3 performances 4 consecutive weekends.
Wow.
And you can get tickets by visiting MauiOnStage.com.
Okay. And are you in this, or are you behind the scenes on this one?
No, I'm kind of a jack of all trades at the theater. That's why when you asked me earlier, what do you do? What's your title? I had to kind of make something up, because I do, sometimes I might run light. Sometimes I might just be helping out with the public relations and marketing. Sometimes I might direct. Sometimes I'm the stage manager. Occasionally I'm just the guy helping out with special events, like when bands come in and want to rent the theater. So I have a number of skills that I can assist in the events at the EL Theater.
This kills me because, like, today I'm running the show completely by myself. I could have put Jack of all trades up under your name. You could have officially been today Michael Pulliam, Jack of all trades. Wouldn't that look good on a resume?
It might look. Maybe we should, change it. If I ever come back, I'll be that instead.
Okay, and that's what I'm going to put on there from now on. I'm going to make a note over here. All right, I'll find a pen here in a second. But this isn't the only thing that you have going on, this Legally Blonde, is it?
No, there's actually another event that I wanted to get the word out for entries. It's called Shower of Stars.
Okay, now is this having to do with hygiene?
No, it does not.
Okay,
It's
so you're
an
not going to be
old-fashioned
showering.
talent show. Nobody has to actually shower on stage, but it would probably be a good idea if everybody showered before they took the stage.
You know, what's so funny is so many women in my audience right now were hearing Shower of Stars, and they were thinking, I could shower with Clooney.
That's a whole different contest.
But, okay, when we talk about the old style, we're talking about vaudeville talent shows, right?
In a roundabout way, that's exactly what it is.
And for people not familiar with that, it's kind of like an open format, anything goes kind of
It
talent
is,
show.
and I would also compare it to like the Apollo Theater style talent show.
Mm.
You know, each artist comes up and they do what they do.
Yeah,
It's
and-
not limited to any genre. It can be singing, dancing, comedy. You could
Really?
sign up.
Comedy? No, have you ever seen this show? You do not want me losing a competition with my, station branded behind it here. But how long do these usually last?
The whole show is maybe 2 hours. There's a preliminary competition at Queen Ka'umanu on July 24th, and then the people that qualify for the finals perform at the EL Theater.
So the 24th, is that kind of like a guerrilla thing where you just have to run in there and impress a bunch of people and then get out alive?
No, it's the same format. People just take turns doing their song. A lot of the contestants end up doing singing along to like a karaoke track, but there's been dancers and comedians and just about everything. Magicians.
Really? You've had magicians there?
Absolutely. It's been going on for, I guess, about 33 years, and I've been working as the stage manager for the past 3 years.
Wow. Is that a lot of work? I mean, because usually when you're dealing with talented people, you got to deal with egos. But when you're dealing with people in a talent competition, it's like cattle.
Yeah, somehow I think I got the reputation over the past few years that Michael is good to deal with a million people backstage. And so I get a lot of those gigs. And sometimes corporate conventions, if they have a one act right after the other, somehow I got on a short list. And I'll get these random phone calls from producers going, I hear you're a good backstage manager. Do you want to work at the Grand Wailea next week? Or whatever.
Wow.
And it'll just be one day, there's some, convention show or whatever. And then I do this also for another event called Rams Got Talent. Real Estate Association of Maui has a talent show every year, and I get to,
Wait a minute, wait.
Yeah.
Real estate agents have a talent show.
They do, and I get to be the backstage manager for that too.
Okay, what kind of talent do real estate agents have?
The guy that won this year is fantastic. His name, I think, is Phil Smith, and he just played at Fleetwood's like last weekend or something. He's phenomenal. He's from, I don't know if he's from Baton Rouge or New Orleans, but somewhere like that. And he plays clarinet and a number of other instruments, and he's got like a Pete Fountain, Dr. John
Really?
kind of act. I mean, he's got this personality. He tells jokes, and really good musician.
And this is a real estate guy.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he does, but he works for one of the agencies.
You have just broken my stereotype of real
He's
estate
great.
agents.
I'll just give him a little plug. If he pops up at Fleetwood's again, everybody should go see him. Very talented.
And a real estate guy. So not only can he close down the club, but he can close up on your house.
He probably could.
Oh, God. Well, on the Shower of Stars thing, okay, so you go to the preliminary,
Yes.
and that's kind of like the open call, you would say, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can call in advance, and I'm looking at the number upside down, 214-7836, 214-7836, and you can pre-register, or a lot of people just show up the morning of 10 a.m. at Ka'umanu and, just fill out the forms then.
Okay, so run us through what happens. You show up there, you fill out the forms, and then you're thrown to the wolves.
You're thrown up on the stage at Queen Kaumanu, yes.
Yes.
And then there's a panel of judges. If you want to be a judge, I can hook you up with that. And you
know the type of talent that I bring to this show. Do you really want me judging others?
So it's a point system, and the judges vote. It's a semi-secret ballot. They vote for what they want to vote for, and the points are totaled up, and then the top vote getters move on to the finals.
Okay, and then when we talk about like up to the finals, it says here that you have 2 divisions.
Yeah, so you've got
you could have a
17 and
kid-
under and 18 and over. Occasionally, some 17-year-olds will want to compete in the adult category. But last year there was a kid, I think he was 5 years old, doing a dance in a Superman costume, and he was a huge hit.
Oh my God, really?
He didn't win, but he was definitely a fan favorite.
How can you do a dance in a Superman outfit and not
He
win?
figured it out. He it takes a 5-year-old to figure that out.
That's a horrible thing to teach. Like, we don't know how you're going to fail, but if you figure it out, come back and tell us. Oh, God. And now, I mean, you've been doing this for 3 years as a stage manager. Have you ever done any of the judging?
No, I haven't. I like doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work.
Really? Is this, I mean, it seems like, in the early part of your life, hanging out with your dad and stuff, you like to be in front of things and in front of things. Is this some sort of transition as you've gotten older? You're just like, I hate people, and I'm going to go further and further back into the stage?
No, I never was what I would call an actor or a performer. I have been in a number of shows. I was in The Producers a couple years ago. I've been in other productions on Maui and done theater in Chicago and San Francisco. But I always fell into it because a friend was either producing or directing a show and said, we've got this one part, nobody wants to play it, he's only got 6 lines, will you do it? And so I kind of fell into performing that way. And I've always done singing because I like to sing, but I was always much more interested in sort of a dream of maybe, having a once-a-week gig at a hotel and a lounge, but then I ended up doing musicals because I can carry a tune, basically.
So you would be a lounge singer?
Well, I think it was more of like a hobby. Like, I don't think I would ever make a living at it, but I do enjoy singing like standards. Guys like Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra are big heroes of mine.
Oh, God, I wish I had a piano here. If I had a piano, I would totally make this happen.
Well, occasionally you might find me at different places doing karaoke. Not all the time, but occasionally.
Is it tough, like getting you up on stage?
No, like I said, ever since I was a kid, it was just, I don't know if it was inborn or something. My grandfather was a phenomenal public speaker, and he would speak in front of just hundreds of people and was very funny. And he probably should have gone into being something like a stand-up comedian or a radio host or something. So it's part of it is that. And my dad was a great salesperson, which is kind of like he was a sales executive and eventually became a general manager. That's kind of like putting on a show in front of your staff all the time.
All the time.
And then my mother was a teacher, which is, you're performing for kids 5 days a week, So I think part of it is osmosis, just watching my family and just sort of having it possibly be genetic. I don't know.
Well, we are getting kind of close to the end of the show here. But before I move on into the ultimate capper question, out of these 2 things, Shower of Stars or Legally Blonde the musical, which one would you say is the most fun right now for you? Because I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think, I mean, what's not fun about watching a bunch of gorgeous women on stage all the time?
Yeah. I mean, because this, you don't know who's going to show up yet, It could be me, and God, what a nightmare that would be. But, this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, God. And are you going to be doing any more acting, any more singing in the future, or are you completely
my next big project is I am the festival coordinator for the Maui Fringe Festival every year.
Oh, so what is the Fringe Festival?
It's a one-act original play festival every January, February at the EL Theater. So that's my next big project. And then next summer I will be directing The Addams Family, the musical, and I'm getting very excited about that.
You're in a lot of musical stuff.
Well, I like dramas too.
Really?
But musicals, I directed a drama last year called Hollywood Arms.
What is Hollywood Arms?
It was a comedy drama about Carol Burnett's childhood, and that was last May, I believe, so a little over a year ago.
Wow, Carol Burnett. So that was like her and Tim Conway.
The old Carol Burnett show.
Oh, and I've never heard of this. What was it like? Just I know I'm cheating right now.
No, not at all. It was. She had a very hard life. Her mother and grandmother were on welfare. Her mother was an alcoholic. Her father was an alcoholic, and so she was sort of forced to become the leader of the family in a lot of ways and grow up in a hurry. And at the end of the play, she ends up going off to New York and becoming a big success, and ended up raising in real life her own little sister because there was just far too much dysfunction in her between her mother and her grandmother. Wow. So a lot of people didn't know about that, and then it was written by her daughter and herself, and there were lots of funny things in it, but it definitely was not a comedy. So I don't always do silly stuff.
Yeah. Well, if somebody, God, that is depressing. But if somebody sat down and actually wrote a book about your life, what would you say would be the most funny part of it?
Gosh, I guess I always have to go back to the Friars Club, and then just the idea of a circle of like-minded friends that I've had for decades, that even though they might be in different corners of the world, that we always stay in touch together, and just ridiculously funny happenings of partners in crime kind of friends. Yeah.
Well, okay. Now, using the book comparison again, going back, would you say that you've had a good, successful career in life so far?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I have a lot of friends that are 1,000 times more successful when it comes to finances and notoriety and things like that. But that wasn't the path that I wanted to go down, and I'm perfectly happy here on Maui.
I mean, it's who wouldn't be,
That's
honestly,
my point. That's what I always say. And, the friends that maybe have something more prestigious in Chicago or LA or San Francisco, as I mentioned before, that see the aspects of my life and how much leisure time I have, how I'm able to sort of have time to enjoy life more instead of having to plan on taking 3 weeks off to decompress.
It's not, and people don't understand when you work in these things. I mean, you're doing this stuff. I mean, after a while, the pressure builds up, and you feel like, help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have you?
And I have friends here on Maui that I say don't take on another project. I'm not going to single them out on live television, but it's addictive when you get into this aspect of entertainment to just continue to take project after project after project, especially if somebody asks you, because it's flattering to go, oh wow, they want me to take on this important role. It's hard to say no.
But you just said earlier in the show, it's not like they're asking you for important roles. Nobody wants to play this part. He only has 6 lines. Can you do it for us?
Right.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a contradiction there.
Well, I mean, role in the sense of an aspect of a production.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a specific role, but...
God, I'm just, poking holes there. Before we do get out of here for the day, though, everybody has a dream project. Everybody has the one thing that they want to accomplish with their life before it's over with.
Right.
What would you say, in the grand scheme of things, is Michael Pulliam's lifelong big project goal?
Well, I've actually been writing a book about Hollywood scandals.
Really?
That very detailed. We're researching LAPD reports and LA District Attorney's reports for the past 6 years. And at some point I would love to have that book get published.
So you are like a guy into mysteries and stuff like that?
I guess living in LA and working at the Friars and just being in Hollywood, you would hear these stories, and then you would hear what is absolutely not true, like different scandals. Like, let's just take the Black Dahlia, for example.
Everybody knows the Black Dahlia. She was a model, just mysteriously showed up, cut up, and dead on somebody's lawn.
So there's 15 different versions of a lot of these different scandals, and I've been able to, what I think, weed through the stuff that's junk and just get rid of that and get to the most likely truth in regards to about 35 or 40 Hollywood scandals that took place between 1920 and the late 40s.
So that would be what most people would consider the golden age.
Yeah.
Wow. And which one of these mysteries would you say is your favorite to investigate?
I bet a lot of people don't know this one, but it's the William Desmond Taylor murder, who was a director that was found dead in his apartment and ended up being connected to possibly Paramount Pictures, may have covered up some crimes, and a lot of it bears similarity to the O.J. Simpson investigation, where evidence was tampered with and certain information may have been hidden or stolen.
Yeah, but I mean, us now, when we look back at the silver screen or the golden era of Hollywood, we think that these people are great, infallible people, but it was ripe with controversy and cover-ups all the time.
And then there's a number of scandals, and I know just a fraction of people probably remember who some of these folks are, that were completely untrue. There's a scandal about Clara Bow apparently having some sort of multiple partner relationship with the USC football team. And that was just all garbage. It's not true, but it's been printed in so many Hollywood scandal books that people begin to believe that it's true.
And that seems to be something endemic of that whole age, is once you have a great name and you attach a great story to it, you can't separate those two.
It's just like the equivalency of the National Enquirer today. A lot of those stories would have been in the newspapers of William Randolph Hearst and the Chandler family, which was L.A. Times, and then people would just believe it. Because it's in a legitimate newspaper.
Yeah, but let's just be honest, it's L.A. Nothing really is legitimate printed there. Oh, but I got to say, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got 2 minutes here, and I just want to bring this up because I said I was going to bring this up because it's a mutual interest that me and you have. Was not aware of this. You're into ghost hunting.
I fell into ghost hunting, but yes.
Yeah. How did you get suckered into this?
Well, I've always been, it kind of goes back to saying that being optimistic but prepared for the worst. I was a big skeptic for probably 4 or 5 years that the EL Theater was haunted. It was like, give me some proof. I'll believe it when I see it. And one night I saw it, and it was something that you could never possibly dispute.
Really?
And then about a year or so after that, I was contacted. Well, I should say the theater was contacted by the Sci-Fi Channel, and my boss passed it on to me and said, well, will you handle this request to come and film here? And they did a site location, decided they wanted to do a whole episode of the show, asked me if I would kind of be their
Which
co-host.
show is this?
This is called Haunted Collector. And you can find it on YouTube. I think you have to pay 99 cents to watch it. And it's Ghosts of Maui, or Ghosts of Maui County is the title of the episode. And they did a whole paranormal investigation of the EL Theater and were able to capture, not quite as detailed as what I have seen several times in the building, but a pretty good video footage of what you would have to assume is a ghost.
Whoa.
Moving in the building.
And now you're wanting to invite everybody down to the haunted EL Theater for Legally Blonde, the
we
musical.
Actually show that episode every year around Halloween. We have a bunch of Halloween events that we call Rocktober. So if you haven't seen the episode, you can probably catch it there for free sometime around Halloween.
Oh, God. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks again for having me.
All right. For everybody else, tomorrow's show, we will be back, believe it or not, right around 5 o'clock. My guest will be Omar, and, of course, we'll be talking all kinds of things from the Ohm Zone. Until then, though, thank you for tuning in to us, both at 88.5 FM and, of course, Channel 55. Don't forget, though, if you're going for this, what is the date for the preliminary?
The cutoff date is the 24th. The actual preliminary is the 26th of July, and you can call 214-7836. Yes, 7836.
See, good read on that number. Yeah, so for everybody else, go see Legally Blonde or just go shower with some stars.
You can do that too.
Okay. And for us, that's going to do it. Big thanks to Sarah. Big thanks to Lou and Jay and, of course, Joel, who has had a